Above 8,000 meters, the rules of life no longer apply. Here, the air is thin, stripped of mercy. Oxygen falls to barely 30% of what the human body needs to survive. Every breath becomes an effort. Every movement a negotiation with collapse. This is known as the death zone. At this height, your body is no longer living. It is slowly dying. The lungs burn as they struggle to pull in air that is barely there. The heart races desperate to deliver oxygen that never arrives. Vision blurs. Thoughts fracture. Time stretches and dissolves. Even standing still becomes exhausting, as if gravity itself has grown heavier. Silence dominates this place. Not the calm silence of peace, but a vast, crushing emptiness. Wind scours the slopes endlessly, erasing sound, erasing warmth, erasing weakness. The mountains do not acknowledge effort. They do not respond to courage. They simply exist. Around you, the world is reduced to white and stone. No trees, no birds, no sign of comfort. Only sharp ridgelines cutting into the sky and endless drops falling away beneath your feet. The horizon feels close, yet impossibly far. And sometimes the mountain reveals its truth. Along the route, shapes appear in the snow, motionless, silent. Figures that once moved, breathed, dreamed of standing here. Now they remain as markers preserved by coal, untouched by time. Not warnings carved in stone, but realities left behind. Proof that ambition does not guarantee survival. At this altitude, rescue is rare. Help is slow. Decisions become brutal. To stop is to freeze. To linger is to fade. The mountain demands movement, even when the body begs for rest. This is the price of reaching the roof of the world. Above the clouds, above weather, above life itself, the Himalayas rise with indifference. They were not built for us. They do not invite us. They tolerate us only briefly. And yet humans return again and again. Drawn by something deeper than achievement, something older than reason. A pull toward the highest places on Earth, where limits are exposed and truth becomes unavoidable. Because in the death zone, there are no illusions. Only breath, only will, and the thin, fragile line between life and letting go. Long before humans looked up and gave these mountains names, the Himalayas were already rising. Their story did not begin with snow or ice or altitude. It began far below the surface of the Earth 50 million years ago, when two ancient worlds collided. The Indian continental plate, once an isolated landmass drifting northward, crashed into the vast Eurasian plate with unstoppable force. There was no explosion, no sudden violence, just pressure, endless pressure. Rock folded, crust thickened. The ground had nowhere to go, except up. From that collision, the highest wall of stone on Earth was born. The Himalayas did not rise in a moment. They rose in silence, millimeter by millimeter, century by century. Even today, the process continues. These mountains are still growing, lifted by forces deep within the planet. Climbing higher by nearly 5 millimeters each year. What we see now is not a finished monument. It is an unfinished sentence, written in stone. Everest stands as the tallest expression of this collision, but it is far from it alone. Stretching for thousands of kilometers, the range forms a colossal spine across Asia, separating worlds, climates, and histories. To the south, warm monsoon air rises and feeds fertile plains. To the north, cold, dry winds sweep across the Tibetan Plateau. The mountains do not merely exist between them. They control them. Here scale. Peaks rise so high they pierce the jet stream. Storms form and break against their walls. Rivers are born not from springs, but from ice compressed over millennia. Every ridge, every valley, every frozen face tells the same story. Pressure made visible. Some mountains are beautiful, others are feared. K2 rises like a blade of stone, sharper and more unforgiving than Everest. Its slopes are steep. Its reputation earned through loss. Annapurna, equally imposing, hides its danger behind deceptive beauty. Avalanches sweep its flanks without warning. On these peaks, the mountains do not test climbers. They expose them. The Himalayas are not passive giants. They are active, restless, alive. Earthquakes ripple through the region, reminders that the collision never truly stops. Landslides roar down slopes, glaciers grind against bedrock. Snow accumulates, compresses, and transforms into ice that flows like a frozen river, reshaping everything in its path. Standing before these peaks, human time feels meaningless. Empires have risen and fallen below them. Religions have been born in their shadows. Trade routes crossed their passes, carrying silk salt ideas and belief. Yet the mountains remain indifferent to all of it. To ancient cultures, this indifference became divinity. These were not just mountains. They were gods, guardians, thrones of the sky, places where the boundary between earth and heaven felt thin, almost transparent. Even today, prayer flags flutter in the wind. carrying hopes and fears into the thin air. Offered not to conquer the peaks, but to ask permission to pass. The Himalayas teach a harsh truth. Greatness is not gentle. Creation is not peaceful. The most beautiful landscapes on Earth are born from violence deep beyond our sight. What rose from the collision of continents became more than a mountain range. It became a regulator of climate, a source of water, a wall that shaped civilizations, a reminder that the planet itself is still in motion. These mountains are that are not ancient relics. They're young, restless, and unfinished. Still rising, still shifting. Still reminding us that even the most solid things we know are temporary expressions of deeper forces. The Himalayas are not the roof of the world because they stand above it. They are the roof of the world because they reveal what holds it together. To the outside world, the Himalayas are mountains to be conquered, summits to be measured, records to be broken. But to those who have lived beneath these peaks for generations, they are something entirely different. They are alive. They are sacred. They are watched over. For the Sherpa people, the highest mountain on Earth is not called Everest. It is Chomolungma, the mother goddess of the world. A living presence that gives and takes life, deserving not challenge, but reverence. To climb her slopes is not a test of strength alone. It is a spiritual passage that demands humility. Sherpa villages cling to the mountainsides like quiet witnesses. Stone houses sit beneath prayer flags stretched between rocks and rooftops. Their colors are faded by sun, snow, and wind. Each flag carries a prayer, a breath of hope released into the thin air. Here, belief is not confined to temples. It moves with the wind. Monasteries rise in places that seem unreachable, balanced on cliffs, where the land drops away into cloud. Inside, time slows. The sound of chanting monks reverberates through wooden halls, low and steady, like the heartbeat of the mountain itself. Butter lamps flicker, casting warm light against cold stone, a fragile glow held against immense altitude. Life at this height demands adaptation beyond endurance. Children grow up breathing air that would leave most visitors gasping. Bodies adjust, blood thickens, lungs expand. What is dangerous for outsiders is home for those born here. The mountains shape not just culture, but biology. Yet the Sherpa are known to the world for something else. Their role as guides, porters, and rescuers on the highest peaks. They move through terrain that paralyzes others, carrying loads that seem impossible. Navigating ice and rock with instinct sharpened over generations. Nowhere is this more evident than on the Khumbu icefall. Here the glacier is not solid. It is a slow-moving chaos of towering ice blocks, deep crevasses, and unstable bridges that shift without warning. Each step is temporary. Each path must be rebuilt again and again. The Icefall Doctor's elite Sherpa climbers enter this frozen labyrinth before each climbing season, creating passage where none exists. They place ladders across voids, fix ropes along walls of ice. They make movement possible. Their work is relentless and deadly. The glacier moves daily, erasing their efforts, opening new cracks, collapsing old routes. There is no safe moment. Only calculated risk. Each crossing is an agreement with uncertainty. And yet they return, not for glory, not for records, but because this is their responsibility. To the Sherpa, guiding climbers is not about conquest. It is about balance. Between ambition and respect, between human desire and natural law. They understand what many visitors do not. The mountain decides who reaches the top. Before expeditions begin, ceremonies are held. Offerings are placed. Incense burns. Prayers are spoken aloud. Climbers bow their heads asking permission from the goddess herself. It is not superstition. It is acknowledgement. The Himalayas are not neutral ground. Those who ignore this often learn too late. Weather turns without warning. Avalanches roar down slopes without regard for skill or preparation. At altitude, arrogance becomes weakness. Humility becomes survival. And yet amid danger, there is dignity. The Sherpa carry not only supplies, but tradition. They stand as guardians between the modern world and an ancient landscape that resists simplification. Their lives are bound to the rhythms of snow, wind, and silence. They do not measure success by summits alone, but by safe return. In a place where death is never far, community becomes strength. Each ascent is collective. Each descent, a shared relief. The mountain does not belong to one person. It belongs to all who pass beneath it. The Himalayas have guardians, not because they need protection, but because humans do. The Sherpa remind us that the greatest heights are not reached through domination, but through respect. Here on the roof of the world, survival is not an act of conquest. It is an act of understanding. In the highest reaches of the Himalayas, life does not announce itself. It hides. It listens. It waits. Here, survival belongs not to the loud or the numerous, but to the unseen. These mountains are home to creatures that have mastered invisibility, moving through a world of stone, snow, and silence. Among them is a presence so elusive, it has earned a name whispered with reverence: the snow leopard, the ghost of the mountains. Its fur mirrors the landscape, perfectly pale gray, patterned with shadows that dissolve into rock and ice. Against the cliffs, it vanishes completely. Even when it moves, it seems unreal, flowing rather than stepping across terrain that would stop any other predator. For days, it may leave no trace, no sound, no sign it was ever there. This hunter survives where oxygen is thin and prey is scarce, patrolling vast territories with ease that defies gravity. Each step is precise, each movement calculated. Energy here is precious, and nothing is wasted. When the moment comes, the attack is sudden. A blur of motion across near vertical rock, a leap that seems impossible. The blue sheep has only seconds to react. On these cliffs, there is no margin for error. One misstep means a fall into nothingness. Predator and prey are bound by the same law: perfection or death. Yet sightings are rare. Many who travel these mountains never see a snow leopard at all. They sense it instead. A feeling of being watched, tracks that vanish abruptly, a shadow where none should exist. This animal survives not by strength alone, but by restraint. It takes only what it needs and then disappears again. Below the high ridges, another giant moves slowly across the slopes, the yak. Massive and muscular, wrapped in thick hair that shields it from wind and cold, these animals are living engines of the Himalayas. Their lungs are large, their blood rich in oxygen, their bodies built for altitude, where others weaken. For centuries, yaks have carried the weight of human survival food timber supplies. They move steadily along narrow trails, carved into cliffs unfazed by exposure that would terrify most. In storms, they lower their heads and press forward. In deep snow, they create paths where none existed. Unlike the snow leopard, the yak does not hide. It endures. Together, these animals represent two paths to survival in the mountains. One through invisibility, the other through resilience. Both are shaped by an environment that tolerates no excess. The Himalayas are not generous. Food is limited. Weather unforgiving. Winter lasts most of the year. Those who live here must adapt completely or not at all. Even birds are rare at these heights. When they appear, they ride powerful winds drifting rather than fighting the air. Life here is economical, precise, and patient. These animals do not know borders or national pride. They move according to ancient routes, following seasoned snow lines and instinct. Their world is vertical, three-dimensional, and constantly shifting. Climate change now presses into this delicate balance. Snow lines creep upward, prey ranges shift, human activity reaches deeper into remote valleys. For creatures that rely on isolation, every change matters. Yet for now, the ghosts remain. At dawn, when light grazes the peaks and shadows stretch long, a snow leopard may pause on a ridge. Surveying a world that has shaped it perfectly, it exists fully for a moment. And then it is gone. The Himalayas do not reveal their secrets easily. They guard them with altitude, cold, and silence. Those who wish to witness life here must learn the mountain's greatest lesson. To see what survives at the roof of the world, one must first learn how to be still. Between the world of predators and the fragile future of ice, another story unfolds quietly along the mountainsides. A story of endurance measured not in speed, but in steps. This is the journey of the yak caravans, the true lords of the Himalayan trails. When winter tightens its grip, the mountains close their doors. Snow buries paths. Wind erases landmarks. Engines fail. Wheels are useless here. But the caravans move on. Through blinding snowfall, dark shapes emerge from the white. Yaks advance in single file. Heads lowered, bodies wrapped in thick frozen coats. Ice clings to their long hair. Frost gathers on their horns. With every breath, clouds of steam burst from their nostrils. In the silence of the high valleys, their breathing becomes rhythm. Their movement becomes pulse. Around their necks, old brass bells sway and strike softly. Each step sends a dull chime, echoing through the snow-filled pass. The sound travels far, bouncing from rock to rock, announcing their presence long before they can be seen. It is a sound unchanged for centuries, a signal of survival moving through emptiness. There are no roads here, only trails carved by repetition, narrow lines, etched into cliffs, where the mountain drops away into nothing. On one side, solid rock. On the other, open sky. One misstep is all it takes. There are no second chances on these paths. And yet the yaks do not hesitate. Their hooves find purchase where humans struggle to stand. Their bodies lean into the slope, adjusting instinctively to every shift of ice and stone. They move with the certainty of animals shaped entirely by this world. Not fighting the mountain, reading it. These are not beasts of burden. They are living machines. Biological tanks built for altitude, cold, and distance. Their lungs are vast. Their blood rich with oxygen. Their strength is quiet, unshowy, absolute. Where no truck can climb, where no engine can breathe, the yak continues. Upon their backs rests the lifeblood of the high villages. Food, salt, fuel, timber, medicine. Everything that allows human life to persist above the clouds, travels this way step by step across snow and rock. Without the caravans, the villages fall silent. Supplies vanish. Survival becomes impossible. The men who guide them walk close, wrapped in layers of wool and tradition faces hardened by wind. Their eyes read weather snow texture, the slightest shift in the herd. This is not commerce, it is continuity. Knowledge passed down through generations, learned not from maps, but from memory. Storms do not stop the caravans. They slow them. Snow thickens. Wind howls. Visibility collapses. Still, the bells continue to ring. The steam continues to rise. The line holds. In these moments, the scale of the Himalayas becomes overwhelming. Towering walls of rock loom above. The trail narrows to a ribbon. The world reduces itself to breath balance and trust. Trust in the animals, trust in the path, trust in patience. This is not a race, it is a procession. The yaks do not rush, because the mountain does not reward haste. They advance steadily, relentlessly, indifferent to fear. They walked these routes long before borders, long before summits were named, long before the world below imagined life could exist up here. When the caravan disappears into the storm, the bells fading into distance, the trail remains. Empty again, waiting. In the Himalayas, survival does not belong to the fastest or the strongest. It belongs to those who endure. And along these ancient paths, no one embodies that truth more completely than the yak. The lords of the trail do not rule by force. They rule by persistence. High above the plains of Asia, beyond forests, beyond villages, beyond even the clouds, the Himalayas hold something far more valuable than stone or snow. They hold water frozen, compressed, and stored in silence. This is why the Himalayas are known as the third pole. Outside the Arctic, and Antarctic nowhere on Earth contains more ice. For thousands of years, these glaciers have acted as the planet's quiet reservoirs. Snow falls, ice forms, meltwater flows gently downward, feeding the great rivers of Asia. The Ganges, the Indus, the Brahmaputra, the Mekong, the Yangtze. Together they sustain nearly 2 billion people. Farm cities entire. Civilizations depend on what begins as snowflakes on distant peaks. For generations, this system was stable, predictable, balanced. The mountains released water slowly and carefully, season by season. Life below adjusted to its rhythm. But now that rhythm is changing. Temperatures in the Himalayas are rising faster than the global average. Glaciers that once advanced steadily are retreating. Ice thins. Snow lines climb higher each year. What took centuries to build is disappearing within decades. At first, the melting feels generous. Rivers swell. Water flows more abundantly than before. But this abundance is an illusion, a borrowed moment. As glaciers shrink, new lakes form. Form behind unstable walls of ice and debris. These glacial lakes grow silently hidden in remote valleys. And when they fail, the release is sudden and catastrophic. Walls collapse. Water rushes downward with unstoppable force. Bridges, fields, villages, and lives are swept away in minutes. The mountains give, and then they take everything back. Below, communities that once trusted the glaciers now live with uncertainty. Planting seasons shift. Floods arrive without warning. Drought follows abundance. The dependable pulse of meltwater becomes erratic, unpredictable, dangerous. This is the paradox of the third pole. As ice melts, water increases and then disappears. Scientists warn that if current trends continue, many Himalayan glaciers could lose a significant portion of their mass within this century. When that happens, rivers that once flowed year-round may shrink dramatically, with consequences far beyond the mountains themselves. The Himalayas do not only shape geography, they shape destiny. And yet even here, hope remains. The mountains have always taught adaptation. Communities are learning to monitor glacial lakes, to build early warning systems, to adjust agriculture and water use. Ancient knowledge combines with modern science, offering ways to live with change rather than deny it. The lesson of the Himalayas is not one of despair. It is one of responsibility. These peaks remind us that the highest places on Earth are deeply connected to the lowest. What happens in silence above the clouds determines life far below. Melting ice is not a distant problem. It is a shared future. As the sun sets behind jagged summits, shadows stretch across snow and stone. Wind carries prayer flags into motion once more. The mountains remain vast and watchful. They have survived collisions of continents. They have endured ages of ice age and war. But now they face a force unlike any before. Human choice. The roof of the world is changing, and as it does, it asks a single question of those who live beneath it. Will we listen before the rivers fall silent?